And the scene is set, continuation, if you will, as Nathaniel Blake and Axel Linwood begin walking outside of the Church of St. Christina. Nathaniel looks curiously at Axel in response to his last question. The question being, tell me what you know about Damien Black. The question he's not entirely sure of how to answer yet. He really does not know all that much at all, for he claimed that he would seek out insight regards the visions while his brother, Howard Holliday, would seek out the young Bruja. So, as he just sort of frowns at Axel, he has little choice but to say, not much at all, Axel, unfortunately. That's why I'm going to be looking for him next, after this
Starting
Confederate
to make,
soldier that was mentioned.
well, Lothario,
Lothario.
well, Brigadier General. No. You notice that Axel's arm actually tenses. That kind of, when he has you over the shoulder, or his hand over your shoulder, it just tenses a little bit. Just that little poke to his physical stature.
Hmm. Uh,
It
Nathaniel does take note of this using his peripheral vision and, of course, feeling the muscles tense, but he does his best to hide that he has noticed it. He's not going to underestimate the good Axel Linwood.
well, that's kind of disappointing to hear. You see, I'm starting to end up getting the impression that everybody's looking for him. You know what? He just got a little too friendly with the family, and it sounds like he's in hot water.
Hmm. Don't know the details myself, but that appears to be the case. He is a wanted man, a
Well,
object of curiosity.
well, can't have that. Enough mysteries running around as it is, and trying to keep your head on straight typically ends up becoming difficult when you just got nothing but questions and more questions. Probably one of the things that must be maddening about having all the answers.
Who says we have all the answers? As Nathaniel says that very cynically. He doesn't even really try to hide it. There's a sense of just exhaustion in that sentence.
Well, you gotta end up taking the time to do things right. Take your time to learn, but eventually answers typically come in the most unlikely of places. I had this wonderful little conversation with a lovely young thing, close friend, you see. And this close friend was kind enough to kind of let me in on a few things that might be of use. See, the Bruja end up having this bit where they fairly close knit. It's I'd like to end up saying a passion, but that's the underselling it. Instead, what it's more is a case of closeness. I kind of find it amusing to end up seeing that as far as family goes. It's a close thing to mimic in our own. Still, it's a shame that you can't end up filling me in, but you want to know that doesn't change anything. I can't get upset over the fact that you don't know. I mean, it'd be no different than you asking me quantum physics. I don't know, or maybe I do.
I have no interest in quantum physics, Axel. I have learned, or at least personally, there are no answers, just more questions. Just questions within questions within questions within questions. As about this time they reach the old-looking car, he pulls out the key and unlocks it manually, opening the door for Axel.
Axel ends up stepping inside, closing it, buckling his seatbelt this time. Not going to forget twice, is he? No, no. Kind of ends up looking across and says, "So, I'm feeling a little peckish myself. You have any particular ideas?"
As the door is closed and Nathaniel is buckling up and putting the keys in the ignition at this point, as he thinks for a moment and says, I usually choose to find nourishment from the squatters that I have to shoo off in my occupation. But they are not the most palatable. Perhaps you know of someplace better. I've been trying to stay out of the potential feeding grounds of others. It was something that was stressed upon by my sire.
You're lucky about that. See, I don't even have that kind of knowledge. I'll end up saying this much, though. I think I'd rather end up taking my chances feeding in someone's domain and keeping it safe rather than break the secret. And at the end of the day, you got to end up looking after yourself before you can look after others. So, and keep in mind, if I had a better idea of where to end up feeding, well, then I wouldn't be in such hot water now, would I? No, no. If your bandaged head right now is telling me that you ended up choosing the wrong spot. You didn't have a spotter. You didn't have anyone who could help you call it quits. See, I made that mistake myself when I was feeding. And that got ugly.
I am truly sorry to hear about that.
Don't need
Feeding
your
is a
apologies.
delicate thing.
Yeah, I'm figuring that out. Better than biting into plastic, I'll tell you that much.
Mm. As he starts the car at this point, the engine rums and comes to life, almost like the kindred themselves, such an old thing, just suddenly reigniting and belching forth a little sickish looking smoke from the exhaust as Nathaniel shifts gears and begins to drive, and he'll say, how about the Emerald Scorpion? If I'm not mistaken, that's neutral ground.
Yeah, yeah, that's one thing. It's oh, what is today? Monday?
Monday.
Well, pickings will be slim, but also means things aren't gonna end up going so south. Yeah, I think I can arrange something.
All right. Emerald Scorpion it is, as he begins to drive the car out of the parking lot and towards the Emerald Scorpion. After several blocks, again, it's rather late into the evening now. Only the most nocturnal of people would dare to venture out this late into the morning, or the desperate or lonely, or those with no other option. And as the car pulls to the curb, just maybe a block, or actually no, like a few spaces away from the club, the bar, whatever you would deem to call the place. Nathaniel puts the gear into park and turns off the car, and once more the engine dies.
Yeah, well, crowds still make me nervous. Don't get me wrong, but after seeing you in the Primogen, I think it would be best if you stayed near the car. Don't go in.
As he just sort of rubs his hand across the bandages that still line this portion of his face, covering up the horrible gash that cannot heal because it does not have the Vitae to do so. He just sort of says, "Touche.
Well,
Very well, I leave this to you, Axel." As he just sort of gets out and just sort of leans against the car.
yeah. The car's parked almost in a, not quite a back alley, but very dimly lit location. Clearly, he's chosen this spot well to end up keeping the prying eyes on themselves and the conversation at hand. Secretive. It'll do. Axel steps out of the car. Oh. He reaches in his pocket. Seems to be struggling a bit. He can't seem to find something. It takes him a second. Now, I want you to hold on to this. You're going to need it.
As he just sort of grabs, it is a lighter, right?
That is correct.
Okay, he just sort of holds the lighter and looks at it curiously, almost thinking this is some sort of bit of fun he's poking at him right now, but from Axel's serious demeanor, he just sort of nods, although he doesn't have a clue as to what he's going to be needing it for. He'd be lying if he told himself that he was not a tiny bit worried at this, but he does not betray that fact upon his face as he continues to lean against the car, although more intently watching Axel as he begins to head towards the club.
Alright. So, yeah. No, he's not going to be stupid enough to play with it. Better not be. So, alright. Time to get to work. He kind of shoves thoughts to the side and ends up walking in through the doors in the Emerald Scorpion. He ends up taking a moment to fish into his pockets again. And it doesn't take him long to flash a card. VIP. Let in and pass the line. He ends up taking a look. Slim pickings. Okay, do this right. You're not hungry. This isn't for you. This is for family. This is a moment where he catches himself muttering to himself, No. Straighten up. Soldier on. Do what needs to be done. He glances about the room. It's dark set. The few patrons that are in are, well, slim pickings. Slim. Yeah, that's the idea. He looks about and chance die high if he can find someone of adequate lack of physicality. No, this is going to be tough. He looks around and can't seem to find anybody. Most of them are either small groups or a few guys sitting around the bar who just can't end up here. Well, can't seem to end up finding company this night. He actually takes a moment and chooses one. Large man, African. He's sitting there sipping on something, a dark beverage, Ryan Coke, Roman Coke, Coke-Cola maybe, who knows. Sits down by the guy and begins to engage him in conversation. You know, I ended up coming here 5 times now. I still can't do a half-decent Mai Tai. Joman kind of looks at him funny for a second. Axel just kind of turns his head. Well, say this much. Was going to end up picking up what you drinking, friend. Still looks at him funny. White rum and Coke. Okay, well, we'll give that a shot. They got Morgan. He continues with the small talk for a minute. Yeah. He thinks about it and he ends up pulling out a pack of cigarettes. By the way, friend, do you smoke? He says, no, I don't smoke. Why would I don't end up doing that. Bad for the lungs. Don't want. And Axel, looking at him, realizes this guy is lean, but he's not light. Axel's fair size, bigger than him, but this guy might be young and scrappy. Best to do this right. Well, that's all right. I was about to end up going out. He looks to him. You know what? Screw it. I don't need a drink. You know what I need? I need a smoke. That word, smoke, echoes. It seems to linger. It's not a statement. It seems to be more authoritative. There's a bit where he watches the man. Here's the scene if he did it right. It's when the man starts raising his hand like he's going to end up taking the smoke out of Axel's hand, almost on compulsion. Axel just keeps it in hand, begins walking to the door. The man seems to follow me and can't figure out why. But he can't take his eyes off that cigarette. For whatever reason, he can't do it. He's following. Axel steps outside. He is about to put the cigarette in his mouth when he pats his... Ah, fuck. Gotta end up looking for a lighter. You happen to have one, man? Told you I don't smoke. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, we'll wander about. I'll end up finding one. You're looking okay, friend. You look a little buzzed. Just you had too much to drink. Now I'm only on 3. Why would I have too much to drink? Clearly, the man's a little bit of a liar or a lightweight. At this point, it really doesn't matter. Takes a minute when his friend can see him out the front window. There's somebody walking behind him, and he can see Axel walking around with a cigarette in hand. Kind of just placed it in his mouth, and he kind of pats his pockets again, wondering if his friend will be able to spot what's happening.
In the meantime, before Nathaniel, with his trained sense of hearing to hear the sounds of footfalls, a little before that, he had decided to pass some of the time by pulling out a notebook that he keeps within his jacket. He hasn't really shown anyone this before, but he likes to keep it on hand. He sort of laughs to himself, thinking that a long time ago he thought he would have been good enough of a artist to actually potentially have a career in it, but he learned very quickly that he did not have the discipline, and most of the things he does now is just sketches here and there, little cartoons, if you will. As he draws, sort of absent-mindedly beginning to draw the image of a person, the pain of hunger begins to really set in. Deep down somewhere, the beast knows that there is blood within that building, flowing through the veins of the living, almost intoxicating. It begins to tighten harder and harder into a knot. And as he sort of zones out, it's around that time that he hears the sound of Axel approaching. Very quickly, he moves to pocket the notebook and the pen. He does not even notice that he had added a little bit to that drawing of a gash within the man. And from the ink, black hands just sort of clawing out, almost spilling out. But again, he does not notice as he sees Axel approaching with a rather well-built man behind him. And deep down, he knows that that is going to be his dinner tonight. And then he sees the cigarette. And then it makes sense as he just sort of laughs. And then he just sort of, leaning back against the car, just sort of tilts his and goes, "Hey man, need a light?"
Yeah, sure. And he kind of looks to the front. You sure you? He realizes the man then almost immediately, without question, ends up taking the cigarette, puts it into his mouth. Axel just kind of shrugs. He doesn't know what's going on. Yeah, do you got one? The man kind of looks like as if he's expecting.
So he will hastily withdraw the lighter and just sort of walk up to these two gentlemen. Then just sort of click, click. It takes a minute. He never really smoked himself. So he almost embarrassedly just tries to click, click, click a little faster before it finally does ignite. And he almost sighs a relief, a breath of relief. As he holds it up to the cigarette.
The man leans in, like he begins to light it, and he begins to take a deep inhale, and clearly not a smoker. Well.
As he just sort of looks at the man very concerned and goes, "Are you all right, sir?"
Yeah. Axel ends up walking up behind him, kind of tilting his head to his cousin, just nodding.
"Sir, you don't look too good. Perhaps you should sit down for a moment. Come, sit down in this car. It looks like that cigarette hasn't agreed with you too well."
Axel takes the cigarette from the man because clearly it's not for him. Axel actually ponders. There's a few puffs enough to end up making the command to get fulfilled, or is it simply him here going to be weaning and looking at the cigarette the whole time?
Hmm.
That little bit of curiosity keeps him entertained as he watches what happens.
As the man just sort of looks at the cigarette, sort of through his hacked calves, starting to wonder why. Perhaps somewhere deep down inside, he's maybe always wondered what it would be like to try, and he indulged this stranger's curiosity. But oh gosh, his lungs. Maybe it would be good. He feels compelled as this man in the hoodie with the bandages over his face just sort of opens the door welcoming. That chair suddenly looks like the nicest chair he has ever seen. As he just sort of almost goes to thank him, but coughs a little bit harder and is just maybe able to sit down and maybe take a moment to breathe. He might even have asthma. Who knows? But Nathaniel Blake just looks at him dead in the eyes and goes, "You don't look well at all. Here, maybe you should rest for a bit. Go on. Rest. Sleep. You'll feel better. Maybe you've had too much to drink, but whatever it is, it's those things are going to be the death of you." And at that, the man feels this lethargy come over him. Maybe he had drank too much. All he knows is this chair is so nice and so comfortable. He just sort of leans back and slowly begins to drift off. And so he'll just sort of look at, or Nathaniel will just sort of look at Axel and Woodens and just sort of nod his head, and then just sort of say, "I need you to watch my back at this part."
Axel just nods. He actually walks over to the right behind Nathaniel, just observing, muscles tense a bit, getting ready if he has to end up tearing his brother, his cousin, his family off of his food. Heaven forbid the same mistake would be made twice.
And so the man just, with the weight of lethargy coming over him, Nathaniel goes to maybe just sort of prop him up, and while he does so, goes down by the man's neck and the fangs descend. He can no longer keep that bald hunger up inside. In that moment, he allows it to go out and sinks his fangs deep into the man's neck, and at that point, maybe a little pain might have jarred him, but then the euphoria. The euphoria is enough to take him over and just sort of embrace that lethargic command. And he just sort of, almost with a ecstatic gasp, just sort of drifts off as Nathaniel begins to drink that sweet Vitae. It fills him. It is everything that he imagined it would be. And I'm going to need you to roll me a self-control roll to make sure that he does not drain this poor bastard dry. Because he
Okay.
is very
What's
hungry.
your self-control?
It's going to be 3.
Well, given your hunger, I would say it would be 7 plus. 6 being average, but because you're currently at hungry, I'd imagine it'd be a little bit more difficult, but you managed to be restrained enough. Axel, on the other hand, not so trusting, has a hand on your shoulder. You're not sure if it's a case of comfort or he's just prepared to tear you clean off the man.
As he drinks again and again, taking in the Vitae, a strange feeling settles over Nathaniel. It's almost as though he loses his sense of self. He's no longer Nathaniel Blake. As the life of this man flows into him, just 2 vessels holding that quintessential essence of life, that sweet, sweet Vitae. He's no longer a person, he is just an empty vessel just waiting to be filled. But it only happens for a moment. Again, his own psyche begins to push back against that almost hungry void that's knotted inside of his chest. And he begins to slowly realize. He loosens up. He removes his fangs. He licks the wound. He does not take more from this vessel than he needs, although he will need far more by the time he is able to completely recuperate. While he's doing that, something falls out of Nathaniel's jacket in that brief moment of rapture, of blissful nihilism. As Axel sees it, it looks like a notepad, but it falls and lands on an open page, the drawing that he had done before of the man with a rent across his chest and black ink spilling from it into the shape of claws. Nathaniel doesn't notice that, and as he finished licking the wound, he wipes off and says, "Thank you, brother."
Yeah, well, don't mention it too much. Just he looks down at the notepad, but he seems hesitant to pick it up. His attention seems to be on it for a second.
As he notices Axel just sort of looking, he'll just sort of follow his gaze, and when he sees it, roll me a perception awareness real fast. It's really low. Roll only difficulty 4.
Okay. How? Oh, for myself?
Yes, for yourself.
Okay. I know
Yeah.
every single detail of what has been left on the open page, if there is one.
No. This is specifically to uh, Nathaniel. His eyes go wide for a moment at seeing that, and then he hastily tries to correct himself, and he leans over, making sure to do it so that Axel can't see his face as he hurries down and tries to casually just pick it up, but first closing it, then just sort of puts it into his jacket. As the only syllable in his mind is shit.
Uh,
And
no
you were
harm,
very
no
much
foul.
aware of this.
No harm, no foul. It's If I wouldn't know any better, I would have thought that was a tick, but I don't trust that. It's a fleeting thing. Still, more concerned is a friend here who clearly the night has been really hard on him.
As you might look a little surprised, as there is a look of worry across his face, but it's not for the gentleman. It's an entirely separate look of worry, something that you haven't seen on Nathaniel's face yet. Almost an audible, almost fear, as he just sort of says, yes, our friend here has obviously had too much to drink. Perhaps we should call him a cab. Perhaps
Maybe.
we should sort of bring him back into the bar. I'm sure he might have a friend in there. If not, I
Nah,
believe the
he's a
barkeeper
loner.
can.
He's a loner. No. What it would end up, I can get him in there. Hell, it wouldn't be the first time somebody passed out.
Hmm.
What it would end up, he kind of looks. There's a look of worry on his face. He's not sure how to end up taking this, but he just reaches in and pulls the man out, sling one of his shoulders over Axel and heaving him up. Give me about 3 minutes. Just don't drive off without me is all I'm asking.
I won't.
Yeah, well, doesn't take long. Axel just brings him in, because Axel's that kind of guy to just take care of a drunk. He seats him down at the bar. Doesn't take long because no one's really paying attention. It's a slow night. Jack would be disappointed to end up seeing some of his employees just more focused on their cell phones and accounts than they are the actual patrons, but it's just that kind of a night. Putting the man down, takes what's left of the man's drink, tilting it sideways, letting the man soak in his own beverage. I think they'll get the idea as he walks out. By the time he gets to the car, he locks the door behind him, fastening seatbelts. It's a case of seriousness. Loosens the tie a bit, popping the first button, giving himself some breathing space. Breathing.
Nathaniel will again start the engine and drives off without a word. You'll notice he sort of begins to drive his normal route again, maybe for like 1 or 2 minutes before he says to Axel, without really turning to him, "Thank you, Axel."
It's what I do. Besides, I gotta end up looking after people. It's just feels right to end up knowing you're doing something for people. Gives you a sense of purpose, you know. So now that we're alone, you got a little bit of food in you, a little bit of Vitae. You gonna tell me why it is that you looked like you wanted to pop off on me the second that I ended up seeing your little book?
As he'll think for a moment, almost like he wants to say something, but old habits sort of take over again. And he just says, "It's nothing. It's just a book of sketches. All I'm worried about is that next time things will go that smoothly."
Well, I'll say this much: you're a lot better at this than I am. A lot. I like that trick with the making him sit down. That was cute. You know, I would have just taken him in the alley right then and there. I mean, hell, as soon as he leans in, you're gonna bring the lighter. That also ends up making me remember something. He holds out his hand as though expecting something.
Oh, right, as Nathaniel had completely forgot. As they get to one of the stoplights and it's red, he hurriedly withdraws it and hands it.
Takes it. You know, I am really uncomfortable using this thing. You didn't even flinch. That I gotta give to you, friend.
That that was, let's just say that I was taught to maintain composure.
It's a hard thing to do, especially with our family. Some of them are less composed than others. I'd like to think of myself as a guy who tries to end up maintaining it to the best of his ability. I'm not going to claim that ability's high, but, well, so where'd you learn to do that? The whole sit, relax, rest, sleep.
It's just sort of came naturally. I'm a security guard. It's our job to herd people out of places they're not supposed to be, which was
Yeah,
one
but
of the first talents I learned.
I'm still figuring out mine. The weird part is I've seen some that just seem to disappear. That's
Oh,
just the
that?
way it is.
Oh, yeah, that is a neat trick.
I haven't figured that one out. Truthfully, I'm still not exactly an expert in it. Just tried it a few times, usually with mixed results. I mean, hell, sometimes it happens when I don't even know it's happening.
Hmm. You did me a solid, Axel, and that will not be forgotten.
Well,
If you
don't worry.
want, I could try passing along some of the lessons that I learned to you about the Vanishing Act.
You can see like the idea doesn't quite sit well with them for whatever reason. There's reservation behind it. He kind of muddles on it for a moment. You know, one of the first things I was told when I got to end up going on one of my earlier walkabouts this week was that don't let the lack of a heartbeat stop you from pursuing, what was it, an education or higher learning. I was actually starting to think, well, yeah, maybe it is about time I end up learning a little bit more of what looks at his wrists. Veins seem to pop a little bit more, but no real blood flows through them. More what it can do. Still, that's neither here nor there. I'm more concerned right now of you gonna be all right.
I'll be fine.
I hope you're not bullshitting me. I don't. Well, suffice it to say, I end up having a distaste for people who don't tell me when things need to be done. I think it's more just a case of you need to end up making sure that things are done right. And I made this mistake. Some things are just a two-man job, like I said.
I am far better off now than I was. The hunger has subsided immensely. I should be able to top myself off once more, and I should be able to heal
Well,
the
do
remainder.
yourself a favor. Next time, whenever your paycheck comes in, buy a pack of smokes and a lighter. You never know when it comes in handy.
All right. Thanks for the tip. It is a very neat little trick.
Actually, I wasn't even sure if it was going to work. I was actually thinking I might have to end up starting something, but I'm not that kind of guy. Still, he looks out the window. I'm gonna have to end up focusing again on some of the shit that I need to get done. Fortunately, I've been getting off to a kind of slow start, and I gotta get back on it. Well, how about we just enjoy the rest of the evening without any worries on what the hell's gonna happen? It's kind of nice to not have to worry.
As Nathaniel will smile in earnest at that, as he'll look back at the road. True words, Axel. And the car will again just sort of drive into its normal spots, perhaps stopping at a couple other places depending on the particular whims of the two kindred within, as the night continues to roll on here in New Sarum. And with that, our scene will end.